Hi everybody, Fresh Manna, day 5. We're trying to do serious Bible study, and a long time ago I was taught to make sure that I understood the text well before I started to read anything else into it. And the encouragement that I had in those days was to write it out in paraphrase, write it out in my own words. So that's what I've been doing with some of the Mount Moses things. This story I've got now is a story of Jacob. Hope you enjoyed hearing the story of 12-year-old Jacob. Well, this story was when he was a grown-up man, as a farmer in Israel at that time. Okay, here we go. Just the story, not in trying to interpret it in any way yet. Okay. It's coming to the end of the year, and Father Jacob is keeping his eye on the fields he has sown with his barley seeds. The ripening of the crop marks the time for setting the first day for the new coming year, which will be at the start of the next full moon. In the land of Israel, the first month of the calendar is called Abib, and on its 10th day, Jacob will select the lamb that his family will take to the temple in Jerusalem for sacrifice on Passover, the 14th day. It's a bit awkward that Jacob has to break off with his fields ready to harvest, but this year he mustn't miss it, as he has been selected to take a sheaf from his first cut to be used as the wave offering on the 15th, the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. During the past year, one of Jacob's sons has been married, and his wife has given birth to a baby boy, and it's the first time going to Jerusalem. Part of the celebrations at Passover is to remember their deliverance from Egypt back in history, when all the firstborn males of the families of Egypt were killed as the last of the 10 plagues, but that not any of the firstborn of the children of Israel had died that night. Moses had instructed that future generations should commemorate this, and had instructed them to redeem, by the sacrifice of a lamb, each new firstborn male child of their families. According to these instructions, Jacob, in his preparations for the trip to Jerusalem to celebrate the Passover, selects a second lamb from his flock for this firstborn sacrifice. So now, with the family's Passover meal, with the lamb for the family's Passover meal, and the lamb for the firstborn sacrifice, and the first cut sheaf from his barley harvest, the whole family sets out and makes their way to Jerusalem. Jacob and his family arrive on the 13th of the month in good time to settle in, which they do. And at around 7 in the evening, at the start of the Passover day, they visit the temple area where the altar is, and the priest presides whilst Jacob kills his chosen Passover lamb. Back in the time of the first Passover in Egypt, the blood was taken separately and painted on the doorposts and lintel of the house. But today, the blood is taken by the priest and sprinkled on the sides of the altar, and sometimes it will even be taken into the Holy of Holies. Jacob now takes the meat of their sacrifice back to their accommodation. They roast it and eat it, burning any that is left over in the morning. When the meal is over, Jacob gathers his family around the fire, and they reminisce around the stories of Moses. How Moses was sent by God as a baby, as God responded to the cries of his people when the Pharaoh was having all the boy children killed. How Moses was committed to the river in a basket and picked up and cared for by Pharaoh's own daughter. How he was brought up in the palace, but later had to flee after killing an Egyptian. How he spent 40 years separated from his people, until God spoke to him from the burning bush, telling him to return and tell Pharaoh to let the children of Israel go. This was only accomplished after God had sent 10 plagues on the Egyptians. And here today are Jacob's family celebrating that last plague, the Passover that led to their deliverance and freedom, all 2 million of them. Moses and the Israelites left Egypt eating unleavened bread. Jacob and his family will especially be remembering that tomorrow. Back then, the Egyptians gave their children of Israel gold and jewelry as the final event of their incredible escape from Egypt. But changing his mind, Pharaoh, with his army, made a last attempt to bring them back. Yet God provided a miraculous pathway through the sea for the Israelites, a pathway that closed up and destroyed Pharaoh and his army when they tried to follow. So much for Jacob and his family to remember now from the safety of the promised land. It's late when they get to sleep that night. Right after breakfast, Jacob with his son, daughter-in-law and their baby, along with the whole family, returned to the temple, taking the lamb for the sacrifice of the redemption price for their grandson. This is a very special time, as they understand strongly that they would not be here now but for those past events. At this time, they bring free will offerings to the priests to underline to God how thankful they are to him for his care of them, both as a family and as part of his special people. They had become a nation from that deliverance day. Evening is coming, the 15th of the first month, and the Feast of Unleavened Bread is about to begin. The moon is full and bright in the sky as they enjoy eating their evening meal in the open air. Now in the morning, as the Feast of Unleavened Bread unfolds, Jacob, accompanied by his family, return to the temple area. It is already crowded and busy, with the priests performing ceremonies and celebrations, and special attention is given to Jacob as he arrives bringing that first cut of his first crop of his barley. There is a much bigger feel to what is happening now, a more corporate, national feel. The whole land is yielding its fruit, its harvest, its praise. The first part of the Feast of Unleavened Bread is a special part, as Jacob was called forward to bring the sheaf of his first crop, the first fruit. The priest takes the sheaf and raises it high and waves it in the air, as if showing off God's faithfulness to Abraham. God has indeed brought them into a land flowing with milk and honey. Following this, there is a more somber moment as the priest brings to the altar for sacrifice the usual daily year-old lamb. This accompanied by an offering of flour and offering of wine. Each person centers their heart in love for the Lord who has kept his promise to bless them. Then the bigger celebrations begin. For 7 days now, there will be serious celebrations and rejoicings, as on each day sacrifices of 2 bulls, 1 ram, and 7 lambs will be made. During the whole time, unleavened bread will be eaten. No leaven at all is allowed, and the sacrifice of a male goat each day to make atonement for them will keep them grounded so as not to overindulge. Jacob and his family will celebrate, fellowshipping with the other branches of the family they haven't seen for 6 months, and touching base as well with friends from all around the country. How good of God to organise them to come together to worship him, with this added bonus of having holiday time to enjoy with family and friends. I'm going to finish this video here, and the next one I'm going to show you the notes that I put together to be able to make that 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 storyline. Okay, see you now. Thanks. Bye. God bless.